Hello and welcome, Joseph here. In this video we're going to be taking a look at Conduit Coffee's Ship Canal, or as I call it, dark chocolate pie. This is one of the coffees in the Coffee Lovers box this month, Coffee Lovers box number 2. This coffee from Conduit Coffee comes in this 4-ounce bag, so you get 4 ounces whole bean or ground. And if this is the first video you're coming to, I highly recommend you also check out the overview of Coffee Lovers box video. They'll be at the top of the page, or if you're watching this elsewhere, check out the links below the video. I want to just take a little tour through this coffee. I'll tell you a little bit about it, and then I'm going to brew it up and talk more about how it tastes and smells. So the Ship Canal is Conduit's dark roast. Now, if you followed me for a long time, you know that I'm really picky about my dark roast coffees, and that's because I think they're really easy to do poorly, and it takes a level of skill to bring out the dark richness, the sweetness, the roastedness of a dark roast without going too far. When you go too far, the coffee gets burned, gets really bitter, gets really undesirable. So this coffee is done so well. Just opening up and it's smelling it, it has that like rich sort of classic coffee aroma. Brewed, like I said, I call it dark chocolate pie. And the reason for that is that dark chocolate flavor is really prevalent throughout the whole thing, as we're gonna discover when I have a drink. But there's also this like sweet, toasty, like pie crust. And that's kind of what the experience is like. So this blend is a combination of Brazil, El Salvador, and a little bit of Sumatra. That's where a lot of that sort of classic sort of coffee taste, coffee aroma kind of comes from, that Central South America, a little bit of Indonesia for body. I'm really excited to share with you what a good dark roast is like. So without further ado, I'm gonna go ahead and brew this up, and then we can talk about how the coffee tastes, how the brewed coffee smells, and a little bit more. I will be brewing this on a Kalita Wave. It's a really good sort of middle ground of approach to brewing. Of course, different ways of brewing will give you slightly different experiences, but the Kalita will give us a good look at what it's going to be like brewed on pretty much any kind of drip or pour over method. I've also enjoyed this coffee in the French press and as cold brew, so I'm going to talk about that as well as we're going through the process. So I'm going to go ahead and brew this, and then we'll be right back. All right, we're back. Has a really smooth aroma, like it's rich. I can smell a little toastiness on it and a little spice. Interesting. I like that kind of spice smell. It's almost cinnamony. Interesting. Let's have a pour. Definitely chocolate. Chocolate is absolutely all up in there. And that's like, I mean, I could almost just call this just dark chocolate. Dark chocolate bar, but it does have, well, let's find it. Let's find it before I say what it has. Let's have a taste. This probably wants to cool a little bit. That's actually something, so for those of you who do, if you end up getting the Coffee Lovers box, you'll get some pretty easy to follow guidelines for just brewing the coffee well. And in there, I will tell you a little bit about how when you drink coffee, letting it cool just a little bit can go a really long way for its taste. Dark chocolate. Oh, it's like eating a dark chocolate bar. There's a little something extra in there too. A little something extra in there. And that's the pie. That's the pie crust. That's the pie crust is what that is. Now here's what I love about this dark roast. So this is a dark roast, and you can taste the deeper roastiness of it, but it doesn't have that, it's not burned, so it doesn't have that char bitterness. It's like immediately dark chocolate, and like I said, a little bit of pie crust. And you can definitely taste the body. Even though I certainly have brewed this in a paper filter, so a lot of the oils are filtered out, this still carries a lot of body with it. The point of interest on that, if you do brew this with a French press, for example, that's gonna give you a really thick bodied coffee. And it is absolutely wonderful in a French press. It's really classic in a way. This kind of coffee, this coffee in particular really, on a French press is like, I mean, if you have a French press and you get this box, I want to highly recommend this coffee in a French press for brunch. Maybe alongside some beignets if you happen to be able to make some of those, or pancakes perhaps. Naturally, this coffee can go fantastically well with milk and sugar. As you can see, I find it quite enjoyable just by itself. That's a rarity in dark roasts. I think most dark roasts require a bit of milk to smooth it out. This doesn't need anything to smooth it out. The milk and sugar will only enhance a particular experience. It's going to bring out a lot more of that chocolate, a lot more smooth sweetness. It's going to combine really well with the milk, but it's also really fantastic just on its own. And that's how I always drink this coffee. That's how I always drink most of my coffees, is just by themselves. That's just kind of what I'm used to now. And I really like exploring the taste of coffee that is possible. So yeah, this coffee isn't terribly complex. It's a lot of dark chocolate, and it's got some nice like toasty, sweet sugariness in there that to me is like a pie crust. And that's exactly what it is. It's so sweet. So as this cools, it gets a little sweeter as it cools. And that's really enjoyable. So like I said, this brewed on the Kalita. Absolutely brew it on a French press, brew it on anything. I've brewed this on an auto drip machine. I usually use a Mocha Master when I do that. I would like to point out that this coffee is particularly spectacular as cold brew. And I want to kind of go over that a little bit. So one of the things that I did in deciding what coffees to include in this box is I wanted a range that would be both excellent, hot, and cold. That's probably the case for any of the boxes that I put together, but I did pay extra attention to that this time because we are in right the middle of summer, and it's the perfect time for that sort of thing. Now, when you cold brew a coffee, cold brew specifically being that you essentially take the grounds and you immerse them in room temperature or cold water for 12 to 15 hours. You're not using hot water at all. And what that's going to do is you're going to, there are certain elements in coffee that require hot water to extract. That's a lot of more brightness, a lot more acidity. That's why you'll often see people refer to cold brew as low acid. It does come off tasting a lot smoother. And this particular coffee, I know, when you brew it as cold, it's really sweet. It's like all chocolate. It's almost like fudge. And it's such a perfect cold brew coffee. That is another one of the reasons why I had to have this one in here. You'll probably miss out on a little bit of well, not miss out, but you won't have the hot water there to pull out more of the dark chocolate brightness. It's still a dark chocolate, but not quite like it is brewed hot. Like I said, it leans more towards smooth, deep richness and like fudge in that respect. But so this coffee would be perfect as cold brew. Now, cold brew is a little tricky because depending on how you make it, it can use a lot of coffee. You could easily use the entire bag just for one batch of cold brew. So what I want to do here is just quickly tell you a couple different ways you could do it. When you get the Coffee Lovers box, I will give you more detailed guidelines on making a couple different cold brew approaches with this. But right now I just want to tell you how you can go about doing it. So there are kind of two, you could say three main ways to plan about your cold brew. One is to make a cold brew concentrate, and that's the kind of thing you want to make if you're intending on doing like iced lattes, because the concentrate will translate really well in milk. As opposed to something like you could cold brew just a straight up brew that you drink that you add nothing to. And you can kind of do an in-between where you might want to add a little bit of water or a little bit of milk. Now the difference is how much coffee you use for the amount of water. Now let's say you want to try this as a 10-ounce brewed cold brew that you just drink straight up, you add nothing to it. You could do that simply by using 35 grams, and each of these bags comes with about 114. That's about 4 ounces of coffee. So you could use about 35 of those grams along with 350 grams or 350 milliliters of water. Add that all into one container, let it sit for about 12 hours, and then filter it out. You could use cheesecloth, you could use a paper filter or something like that. And then you'd have a really great cold brew. As you can imagine, it gets a little trickier if you're trying to make a concentrate. If you want to make a concentrate, you're pretty much going to have to double the amount of coffee you use for the same amount of water. You can still get a really good concentrate or a really good cold brew out of this along with a few cups of coffee. And that's just what I wanted to demonstrate today, is that you can create a fair number of cups of coffee with this bag. So if you do like the idea of trying it as hot, trying it as cold, you can do both. This cools off, it becomes smooth and sweet. I don't, like I said, I don't usually drink my coffee with milk or sugar, but whenever I have this one, it takes me back, and I kind of want to add milk and sugar just to have that kind of treat. You know, I bet this would also be really good as like a milkshake. Like if you took vanilla ice cream and or chocolate ice cream and just poured some of this in, whew, it's a good one. So that's Conduit Coffee's Ship Canal, or as I call it, dark chocolate pie. This is one of the 3 coffees, one of the 3 roasters that's in the Coffee Lovers box. And as I mentioned before, there's a limited amount of time to order. You must order before the time is up, as I'm roasting all of the coffees at once to make sure that you get it at its freshest. There's also potentially a limited amount of boxes. Some of these coffees are a bit more on the rarer side. Like I said in the main box video, if you haven't watched that, you might check it out. But these roasters are smaller roasters, and they can sometimes run out of coffee. So if you do want to get this, I highly recommend you just order now. If you just want the single box of $22, and that's free shipping to US addresses. But you can save a little bit by subscribing, and that's $20, and again, shipping is included to US addresses. You can check out all the details on the page above and subscribe or buy your box. Really dive in and enjoy this coffee along with the other 2.